SCOTUS, Supreme Court, they have ruled in favor of a white woman in a reverse discrimination suit. Put up the picture full mass at background. We will analyze. The Supreme Court has sided with a straight white woman in the decision that makes it easier to file reverse discrimination. Now, the reason why this part is important is because discrimination, typically based on the context of the Constitution, is to protect individuals who historically have not been protected. The Supreme Court on Thursday sided with the straight woman in Ohio who filed reverse discrimination. Now, the word straight is there intentionally. You will see in a moment why. The lawsuit against her employer when her gay boss, that's the reason why it's contextualized this way in the actual court ruling. The gay boss declined to promote her, okay? The ruling will make it easier to file suits in some parts of the country. Now, despite the politically divisive debate playing out over the workplace diversity efforts, a fight that has been fueled by Donald Trump, a unanimous coalition of conservative and liberal justices were in the majority. Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson wrote the opinion for the court. Quote, "Our case law thus makes clear that the standard for proving disparate treatment under Title VII does not vary based on whether or not the plaintiff is a member of a majority group," Jackson wrote. Now, this changes case law, transforms precedent. Why? Because of what I just said earlier. That based on our interpretation until now of the US Constitution, Title VII, that people who are discriminated against must first qualify based on their historical, immutable status. Okay? Now, Marlean Ames started working for Ohio's state government in 2004 and steadily rose through the ranks at the Department of Youth Services. She claims that in 2017, she started reporting to a gay boss and was passed over for a promotion that was offered to another gay woman. This is her claim. Ames was challenging or is challenging a requirement applied in 5 appeals courts across the nation. What is that requirement? That majority individuals raising discrimination claims must demonstrate, quote, background circumstances in order to pursue their suit. A plaintiff might meet that requirement, for instance, by providing statistical evidence documenting a pattern of discrimination against members of a majority. Ames could not do that, so she lost in the lower courts. So here's the contextualization of the high court on that. The reason why that has been basically the measure, we call these things rules, and you measure the rule and make sure all the rules are applied, and all the rules happen in this particular case. The court said, listen, we don't really need background information if you happen to be an individual where the country has provided enough background information for us. Meaning, if you are of a particular group, the country has likely discriminated against you holistically, outwardly, publicly, from racism to other forms of bigotry. And because of that, we don't need background information. You can just bring your case forward, okay? If you're in the majority group, you do need some background information. You're not excluded from filing, but you do have to provide some level of background information because that's the contextualization of the court. Now, a reminder, put her up. Yesterday, we reported that the Supreme Court rejected an appeal filed by Ms. Chanel Nicholson, a Black dancer in Houston, Texas, who claims she has been discriminated against by multiple Houston clubs that place limits on how many Black women they will hire. Okay? All but 2 justices, ironically. Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson and Justice Sotomayor determined that the more recent discriminatory acts alleged by Nicholson were not acts that stood on their own, but, quote, continued effects of past discrimination that is no longer actionable due to the statute. Jackson's opinion focused on the allegation or allegations from 2017 and 2021, arguing that both alleged discrete instances of discrimination occurred within the 4 years before Nicholson filed a lawsuit, making the Fifth Circuit's claim that the statute of limitations was up patently erroneous. Okay, all of these things are changing and transforming before us. There's an op-ed that I wrote in Rolling Out when there were many on the left and everyone on the right who said, get rid of affirmative action. Remember that? I wrote an op-ed. Most of it was to those on the left who agreed with it. Execution is one thing. Implementation is another. I can agree that it has not always been done properly. But in that op-ed argument in Rolling Out magazine, I made the argument, this is chess, not checkers. They will utilize a victory in the affirmative action arena, which isn't even a policy. Affirmative action is a general framework of committing to diversity, and that's it. That's nothing else. It doesn't have a requirement of quota. And you also do not get any kind of special treatment, meaning if you didn't qualify academically for an institution, you could not get in front of the admissions committee anyway. So this was not about lower qualifications. All of these things were misnomers and misinformation that the right put out intentionally. But the bottom line is, you stand for getting rid of affirmative action, understand the next domino that must fall. I say the same thing to individuals who may stand against our brothers and sisters in the LGBTQ community. Because if you stand against them, they utilize that to create a proxy to stand against you. This is how they operate. All right, Jackson, thoughts here?
Yeah, so to me, a lot of what this is just a continued extension of corporate America and the right wing in this country's attempt and mission to subjugate the public. So whether it's stuff like this, because as you pointed out, discrimination tends to imply the majority versus the minority. You don't really need protections if you already have a leg up in society. So, whether you look at something like this or the Supreme Court, which is extremely political and illegitimate, by the way, they're supposed to not be political, but we're long past that point. But you look at things like the reversal of Roe v. Wade, how the Supreme Court is continuously giving Donald Trump more executive power to do much of what he wants. And Donald Trump is throwing cases that other federal judges have asked him on to the Supreme Court because he has faith that they'll look out for him. They're just letting him dismantle financial institutions. The constant push towards dismantling healthcare in this country, like Donald Trump's big beautiful bill that he's trying to get through. Yeah, there's a couple Republicans in the Senate who are saying they won't vote for it. We'll see how that goes, because they typically do. I do have to point out Rand Paul, who's against the big beautiful bill. He's not against it because tens of millions of people will lose their healthcare. He's against it because it's just the deficit. So screw your healthcare, but the debt and the deficit. You know what I'm saying? Like we got to get that under control. But this really all just comes down to, look, why can't you just do and be better? Like you sent this, you filed a case because you didn't get a promotion, you didn't get what you were looking for. Just do a better job or switch jobs. That's just life. That's life. Like you don't always get what you want. You just don't. You can't have it all. Sometimes other people win over you. Sometimes people get a look before you. That's just life. Sometimes you get dumped. Sometimes people die. Things happen. You got to deal with it. So this whole thing to me is just childish, but very unsurprising that the Supreme Court would do this, because this is what they're doing. And unfortunately for everybody else, for all of us, these people are going to be in the Supreme Court for decades. The Brett Kavanaughs, and everybody else. So we're just getting rolling with this, but this is just class warfare and cultural warfare. The less opportunities regular people have, whether that's, middle class people, LGBTQ, colored people, whatever it is, the less likely it is for them to be able to climb in society at all. So that's all this is plain and simple.
Yeah, and guaranteed to be ripple effects and updates from this. We'll bring it to you.